Hey guys, it's Cameron Flemming with the Flemming team, and we're here today with Gary Pickren, our favorite closing attorney here in Columbia, South Carolina. If you've been watching our channel for any amount of time, you know that we want to give you all the information possible to help you have the smoothest real estate transaction as possible. And so we have Gary here today, and what we want to do today, Gary, is we just want to ask you some of the frequently asked questions that we get from buyers and sellers about the real estate transaction. Okay.
That was great.
Hey Gary, what's up, man?
And I'm really excited to be here. You know, the Flemming Group is just absolutely killing it right now in real estate. And we're just so happy to be part of you guys and helping you guys grow. But you guys are killing it. Just absolutely doing a great job.
Man, really, I really appreciate that. And we really appreciate you guys. Ever since we got together, you know, we've been just really strumming along, helping as many people as we can. So we appreciate you guys. So I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm going to ask the first question. Most buyers want to know, what does the closing attorney do for the buyer and seller?
Charge you lots of fees and then just have you sign a few pieces of paper and leave. That's really what we do. No, just kidding. That's what most people think we do. We just charge lots of fees and then have you sign 4 or 5 pieces of paper and go. Unfortunately, that's not it. So there's a lot that goes into what we do as closing attorneys, both from the buyer side and for the seller. And so I guess the easy part would be to start with the seller if I could. So for a seller, we have a limited level of representation for that seller because there's not as much to do for the seller as there is for the buyer. So what we do for the seller is, first of all, we're going to get the payoffs, whether it's a mortgage payoff, a tax lien, judgment, or anything of that nature. We're going to get those payoffs for the seller. We're going to make sure that the deed is properly prepared so that the seller can transfer the property from themselves to the buyers. We're going to prepare the settlement statement, which will set out all the fees, any money that's involved in the transaction, so that the seller will have a full accounting of what they sold the house for, any debits they have, whether it's a judgment, whether it's a tax issue, whatever, homeowner association, sewer bills, and all the debits from that, with the gross amount being at the bottom. And what we will do is do the closing with that seller, go over all the documents, explain what they're signing, settlement statement, deed, affidavits for title insurance and ownership and things of that nature. We will then, at the end of closing, disperse the funds to the seller. We will send all the payoffs out to those creditors. We will also then record the deed for the transaction. So that's basically what you do for sellers. You see it's very limited. The buyer's a whole different ballgame because there's a lot more involved. So the first thing we're going to do for a buyer is we're going to search title. We're going to go to the courthouse, boots on the ground. We actually have people that go over there and do this service. And they're going to look back for neighborhoods 40 years, for acreage and lakeland 60 years. And they're going to go back through all of those court records for 60 years to make sure that the current seller owns the property. They haven't sold any part out of it. Nobody else can claim any part of it. The boundary lines are as we believe they should be. We're going to look for restrictions and covenants. We're going to look for any easements or anything of that nature that might be on the property, or anything else that needs to be taken care of. We're going to look at every single deed during that 40-year period and make sure everybody signed that was supposed to sign, that the legal descriptions were right, and so forth. And if we find any of those issues, then we're going to help the seller correct those issues for you. Once we get the title work down, we're then going to put that in what's called a title insurance commitment. If you're doing a loan, the lender is going to require title insurance for you. That's a policy that helps protect the lender in case there's any title issues. They don't lose that their lien against your property. As an owner, you're also going to buy owner's title insurance, and we'll save that topic for another day. But we'll prepare that title insurance commitment showing that the property can be transferred and what any issues are on that property. We're then going to help the buyer with any surveys they want to order. We're going to order a homeowners association information. We're going to then start working with the lender, and from that, we're going to find out what the lender needs us to prepare. It's going to be a settlement statement. There's going to be a closing disclosure statement, and then they're going to send us their documents, and we're going to prepare our documents to match theirs, to mirror their documents, so that they balance and we balance on what everybody believes the number should be. And then once we get all of this put together, then we'll have the parties come in. We sit down with the buyer, which takes 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how many documents we get from the lender. We explain the settlement statement, which has all the figures on it. We explain the CD, which has all of your loan information on it. We go over the note, the mortgage, any affidavits the lender has. We'll talk about title insurance. We go over the survey. and we spend that time together answering any questions you have, going over any concerns. And then once all the parties have signed everything, the lender agrees that we can disperse the money, then we will disperse the money to the buyer, the seller, anybody that's entitled to get money. And then we record your deed and the mortgage at the courthouse. And then when those come back, we send those back to you. So there's a lot of work that goes on truly behind the scenes. If everything goes right, Cameron, on our end, the closing is a celebration. You come in with the client, we're having a good time. We have, believe it or not, our own beer now that we collaborated with the Columbia Craft. It's called Closing Time. So we try to make the actual signing kind of a formality and a fun time where you get to ask the seller questions about the house, you exchange keys, you get to see the agents and thank them for their hard work. And believe me, guys, they work very hard for you. And at the end of the day, we take a lot of pictures and we have a lot of fun, and everybody goes home with a new house or a lot of money in their pocket, we hope.
That's right. And man, Gary, that's one of the things that I really enjoy about you guys is one, right? So there's this slew of things that you do up front. You guys do an excellent job of really just getting them done on the front end. That way, like you said, on the back end, everything's handled and we can just celebrate, right?
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you, I've used other closing attorneys, Gary, and that's not always the case. Sometimes we're scrambling right there at the end to try to pull things together for the closing, and that's just simply not what you want. So I really appreciate you guys for always having things settled. And then when it's time to close, we can just have a little fun. And I appreciate not having to worry about those things for my clients when they're in your hands. Now, that kind of leads me to the next question, Gary. What are some of the challenges that we can face through the process that may impact the buyer or the seller, that may kind of, make things challenging from an attorney's perspective?
So real estate's kind of a hurry up and wait type of deal because everything has to happen on the lender's end. You a lot of times have to hurry up and wait. And it seems like everything's back end loaded for what we do as real estate closing attorneys. So you may sign a contract on the first of the month. It's not closing to the end of the month. We're doing the work up front. We're doing the title search quickly and getting that to the lender. But then there's a long period of time where it doesn't seem like a lot's going on. And then all of a sudden, the day of closing, the day before closing, it seems like mass chaos. And in some ways it is, because that's just how our real estate closing process has evolved over the years. I've done this for 26 years. It's never changed. I mean, it just is what it is. So because of that, it does seem like there's always last minute issues because a lot of this stuff is last minute. So if you think about all that has to happen, it's like a line of dominoes to do a real estate closing. Every single domino has to be in line. And when one gets pulled out, it stops it. So for instance, your lender can't send the package to underwriting so they can make sure that you qualify the loan until they have certain information from you as a buyer, such as your tax return, your employment information, social security number, and things of that nature. So when any of those things get pulled out of the line, it creates a problem. And, unfortunately, because the lending laws continue to get rewritten and revised all the time because of what happens real time. And if you think about 2007, 2008, after the economy collapsed because of real estate, we had this tremendous change in a lot of the rules and regulations, and things tightened up. And so you have this period where things go very tight and then they swing back the other side and they're very loose. But right now we're still kind of in that more tight area. And so what you're going to continue to see is lenders are very restricted in what they can do. So you first of all can have problems if you're not getting the lender what they need. And sometimes even when you get them what they need, it still seems like they have problems because you may be self-employed like a real estate agent or an attorney, and you got additional documents you got to prove. You may have child support now you got to prove, or you may have just recently got married or divorced, or you had a name changed, and all of that plays into it. On our end as closing attorneys, obviously the number one issue we can have is title problems. And just because you bought the house 3 years ago and nobody said there was a problem to you, doesn't necessarily mean there's not a title problem. Right. It could mean that your closing attorney missed it. I mean, if you didn't use Blair Cato, I mean, you could already have a problem right there. Right. But you use a good attorney like Blair Cato, hopefully we got it the first time, but we have to go back and we don't make an assumption that just because it's already been closed once or twice or three times in the last 20 years that everything's fine. And we find lots of problems. Then you have the issues of getting your payoffs. And, it used to be back in the day, you could call a lender and you get a payoff like that. For some reason now there's 4 or 5 different lenders that when we ask for the payoff on your mortgage, it takes them 4, 5, 6 days. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense why it takes them so long to hit a button and tell us how much is owed.
Right.
Same thing with homeowners associations. You got to find out how much you pay for HOA dues, how much you're entitled back. And sometimes the HOA is a company. Sometimes it's the old man down the street who's always on vacation and he's the only one with the information to get it to you. So those things can cause delays in your closing. And so one of the things we do at Blair Cato is we try to do everything we can to prevent those delays. So my advice to you is when your real estate agent calls, when anybody from the Flemming Groups calls you, or anybody from the lender calls you, or anybody from the law firm calls you and says, hey, we need this information. If you want a smooth closing, quickly respond. Even if you don't have it, say, I don't have it right now, but I can get it to you within 4 hours, or I can get to you by tomorrow. Is that going to be okay? Because any delay you have in getting information to those 3 parties can delay your closing. And it may be simple, something as simple as, I need your social security number because your name is Michael Jordan. You would not believe how many Michael Jordans there are in the world now, because the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan, yes, he's the GOAT. He have a lot of people named after him, right? If you were a kid growing up in the baby born in the 90s, people named you Michael Jordan if your last name was Jordan. And so we have to go through and make sure those judgments aren't yours and there's some other Michael Jordan. Well, only way I can do that is with a social security number. If you're not calling me back and giving me those last 4 digits so I can disprove those judgments, that's the kind of stuff that causes delay. But when you work with good lawyer, Blair Cato, great real estate agent, Flemming, but you also work with local lenders. I cannot stress this enough. Work with the lender that your real estate agent has a great relationship with, that's local. Things go smoother. Because I can tell you right now, if you're working with a lender that's the 57th 8th Street Bank of Southern Arkansas, Ozark Mountain River Bank, good luck getting somebody on the phone.
Right.
But if you're working with the people that your lender, that your real estate agents have a great relationship with that are local, I can guarantee you, Cameron can get on the phone and say, hey, what's going on with this? Or you can get on the phone with that originator and say, what's going on? And you'll get a live human being that knows who you are, that knows your file, and can help get those things smooth over. And when we have problems trying to get things done, I can pick up the phone and say, hey, and they know who we are, we know who they are, and we can work as a team. But that's not going to work when you work with these big national lenders that every time you call, you get a different person from a different country that doesn't know who you are.
I can't agree with that more. And as a little note, if you haven't watched my interview with Craig Johnson of New American Funding, please make sure you do that. He is our trusted local lender, and you would just be so surprised that when you don't put these things in line, how things can get out of whack. So definitely take a look at that interview as well.
To deal with, and a lot of fun to deal with, and yeah, that's a great group, no doubt about it.
Yep. All right, got it. So another question here for you. So I get this question a lot. Is it okay for the buyer and the seller to use the same attorney?
Yeah, South Carolina Supreme Court has recognized that in this transaction, this is what we're talking about, transactional law, not litigation type law. In this type of transactional law, the Supreme Court has said it is fine for us to represent both sides unless the parties come into a conflict. So yes, it's advised, in my opinion, to let and this actually takes business out of my pocket, because I could easily have my agents recommend all their sellers to us. But frankly, in most cases, it's just easier to let the closing attorney for the buyer handle the seller side, because it's not an adversarial thing, which is why I like doing real estate. There's nothing more exciting to me than helping a young married couple get their first house, or that family that is stepping up to their dream home, or that couple that's retired and are moving to South Carolina to be near their grandchildren. There's a lot of joy in that. Very rarely is that adversarial. Now, when things do turn adversarial, that's why you have your real estate agents who can help negotiate and settle those issues. As lawyers, we don't typically and can't typically get involved in those disputes, because obviously we're representing both sides. But what we try to do, and I work a lot with the Realtors Association, Central Carolina Realtor Association, as a mediator, is I will go to both parties and say, look, I can't take a position in this matter, but I do have mediation skills. So let me see if I can help mediate this issue. What is your issue? What are you looking for? And then I can go to the other side. This is their issue. This is what they want. What do you say? And we can try to bring those parties back together without taking the position. But the only time, if you want to hire your own attorney as a seller, that certainly you can do so. We'd be happy to represent you. if you've had a lot of issues already in the transaction, the agent and is telling you, look, this has been a very difficult seller to deal with, or they're picking a law firm that your agent's not comfortable with, then yes, that would be the time to get your own attorney as a seller. But otherwise, I'd recommend you just using the buyers.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Yeah, that answers a lot there. I get that question all the time, and I think they may do it different in other states.
Right, they do.
In my experience, it's pretty smooth this way. So it's definitely our preferred method.
Very inexpensive.
Right, exactly. Lot cheaper for everybody. So
Right.
Cool. All right, got it. Now, Gary. All right, so we've kind of talked about the transaction and how you guys help get people through the transaction. But you and I really talk a lot about our clients and how we can serve them post transaction. And one of the things that we've kind of really discussed is some of the things that Blair Cato can do after the transaction to really try to help people, tie things together financially and make sure they're on the right path as they move into home ownership or into their next home. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what Blair Cato can do for people after the transaction?
And that's one of the things I really like about your group is that you have this interest in your client that goes beyond just a single transaction. And your group's been very good at creating these relationships, because that's what we're all looking for these days. I mean, when you have Farmers Only and Christian Mingle and all these other crazy dating apps, we all want to be in relationships, whether we know it or not. But the bottom line is you guys want to be in a relationship that goes beyond just a single transaction. And that's what's so great about your group. And so we look at that with you in the same way, is that real estate isn't like buying anything else. If you go buy a new TV, you buy a TV, you forget all about it, it's no big deal. But when you're buying real estate, it's not just the fact that it's the most expensive thing you'll ever buy in your lifetime. This is where your family is going to call home. It's where you're going to raise your family. It's where you and your partner, your spouse, your loved ones are going to spend all of your time together. And this is where your life essentially happens. And so it is a very important transaction. We recognize that. You recognize that. New American Funding recognizes that. And that's why it's so important to look at the house beyond just the financial aspect of, I have borrowed this amount of money, this is how much I got to pay back. And so one of the things that we do here at Blair Cato is that we have a lawyer on our staff that has what's called a Master's of Taxation in Law, which what that means is basically she went to a 4th year of law school instead of 3 years and got even more school debt, which makes her silly, kind of silly in my mind. But she did this so that she would understand the taxation laws when it comes to estate planning. And so Marshall Minton is this lawyer in our office. She is phenomenal. She's young. She has children. She can relate to what you're going through in your life, whether you're a new parent, whether you don't have kids, whether you're single, whether you are retired. She relates to people very well and listens to what people want need to share. What are they looking for in life? If something happens to them, who's going to take care of their children? If something happens to them, what's going to happen to their property? And it goes beyond just the will or the trust. I mean, we're talking about healthcare power of attorneys. We have learned because of COVID that if you're in the hospital with COVID and you can't make your own healthcare decisions, just because you're married to them, live with them, date them, like them a lot, whatever, or raised them, you don't get to make those healthcare decisions. The hospital administration makes those decisions. You have to have a documentation who can make decisions for you. You can have a living will. Lord forbid if something happened to you, and you're not going to make it. Do we keep you on life support system? How do you want your family to handle that? You don't want to put that stress on your loved one. You put it on yourself. You make that decision. And then, of course, the durable power of attorney so that you can do those financial things for your spouse or partner if they're out of town, if they're incapacitated, if they're sick. And during COVID, if we've learned anything, that's important. That's real important. And so after our closing, we will send you some information, some emails, some videos, and say, hey, let's get together. Let's talk about what your estate planning should be, what your financial estate planning should be. And the thing about Marshall is she's so interested in making this affordable for everyone that she has many different plans that are very inexpensive. And she'll even let you pay over 2 or 3 or 4 months with a credit card. We can set you up for an automatic credit card payment over like 4 months, because we believe here at Blair Cato, it is probably one of the most important things you can do for your family is giving them peace of mind. Because I have seen too many times where people have passed away and they have they've been married, maybe this is their second marriage, and they have grown children, and now you got grown children fighting with their spouse, or you have children and all of a sudden the children are fighting over that avocado lamp that nobody in the whole family even likes.
Right.
But now it's the principle of the matter. I want that lamp and we're going to fight over it. Why let your family fight and get it ruin relationships over stupid stuff that you can handle yourself?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I really appreciate you guys for taking that second tier approach to helping people. I think, that's what our business is about, trying to make sure our people are served well. So I really appreciate you guys for that. And Gary, I really appreciate you coming on to the channel. I'm excited to, have the people that I really see doing great things in the business. And to our viewers, I just want you guys to know, like, Gary closed my own home, and you'll kind of see that common thread with the people that I bring onto the channel. Like, these are not only people that I recommend to you or, my mom or my dad, but these are people that I have personally used in my own transactions as well. So we really appreciate Blair Cato and you guys. And, is there anything else that you want to share with our viewers, Gary?
If you want to find more information out about Blair Cato, we do have our logo, our website right there, blaircato.com. We have offices in Columbia, Lexington. We also have offices in the Greenville area. But because of COVID, we've learned how to do a lot of closings remotely now. So we do have avenues. So let's say you are moving in from out west and you can't get here on closing dates. We have ways where we can have notaries come out to you, go over documents with you via Zoom, just like we're having this conversation right now. But check our website out. We got lots of good resources on there. We have a podcast that I do that comes out every Thursday morning about real estate that you might find interesting. And then we also have legal tips. So if you want to go to YouTube and search Blair Cato, we have hundreds of videos for not only real estate agents, but also for the consumer. And we're getting ready to do a whole series of about 50 or 60 new videos that'll be directed just to you guys, the clients that need to know or want to know more about the real estate closing process. But really appreciate, Cameron, you having me on today. What you guys do to provide this information is fantastic, and we really appreciate it and enjoy working with you guys.
All right. Thanks, man. Till next time, guys, make sure you subscribe and like the channel, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.